oh, you can't give people things for free because it makes them lazy. They've said this about pretty much any program that helps average working people. And they know they're lying. How do I know that Republicans know that they're lying? Because if they really and truly believed that giving people something for nothing makes them lazy, damages them, hurts them, which is what they've been preaching to us since 1935, for 80 years now. If they really believed that, then the Republicans would be at the front of the line arguing for a 100% inheritance tax so that we didn't inflict a fate worse than death, being turned into a lazy person on the children of wealthy people.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
The following program, Collaboration Radio, is sponsored by Collaboration, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of NewsWeb Radio Company or its management.
Hey, Carla, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Today's the 3rd year anniversary of the insurrection of the Capitol on January 6th, 2021.
As my theater uncle deemed it, Michael Shepard called it Klanuary 6th.
I like what you came up with.
Honky Kong.
Honky Kong.
Yes.
When they were climbing the gates. Wow. Well, we want to make sure that we don't forget about what happened 3 years ago.
We cannot. Because we were in the situation we were in 3 years ago because a couple of 100 years ago, almost, well, yeah, a bunch of folks let some stuff go, a little thing called the Civil War. And they dropped the ball on a little tiny thing called treason and tried to placate people and didn't put folks in jail. And then the Confederacy and that particular brand of racists ran amok. And their ancestors showed up at the Capitol January 6, 2001. So here we are with this show today.
Welcome to Collaboration Radio. We're at the intersection of art, activism, and social change. That was DJ Lady D with our opener. We're here on WCPT 820 AM, Chicago's progressive talk radio, Saturdays at 4 p.m. Central Time, also live streaming on Facebook and WCPT.com, and then available via podcast, wherever you get those things. I'm Anthony Mosley.
And I am Carla Stillwell.
Yay!
Of the Southside Stillwells.
And we're here with Henry in the studio. Here we're up on North Milwaukee. Hi, Henry.
Hello.
Hi, Henry.
Carla's back.
It's been so long, Carla.
Give a short testimony about your tribulations.
So listen, all those times I almost choked on the air, I was actually actively dying. For real. So I had this rare condition called severe aplastic anemia. And so long story short, I didn't have any red blood cells. And so I was losing oxygen the whole time. I thought it was the flu, but it was not. It wasn't pneumonia. It was that I needed a couple of blood transfusions. So I've had those, and now I'm back. And my skin is skinning. I don't know, you people on Facebook can't see that I'm out here glowing, looking healthy and normal,
Absolutely.
and not choking.
Yeah.
Yay!
So I'm back. I'm so happy to be back in the studio.
We're so happy to have you back.
Absolutely.
And we get into 2024 here with exciting times for Collaboration. And we have an announcement pending. We've been teasing it for a while.
Oh, God, it's so good.
Papers have been signed. Announcement plans are in the work, and probably 2 weeks from now, we're going to be able to talk about what's going down. But we will just say that we might have a new home.
What?
Yeah, it's been 3 years since we left the Flatiron Building in Wicker Park, where we had 3 studios, and we might have a new home. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for announcements on auditions for young people to join the light. Stay tuned for a bunch of amazing guests that we've booked around the corner here. Folks like Tanika Lewis-Johnson and David Dismalchian, and DJ Lady D herself will be coming in. So we got a lot going on, and we got a lot to talk about today.
We do have a lot to talk about today. Oh, one last plug. January 21st, I will be doing some art somewhere else, but kind of still with the family. My show, Tad in Fifth City, will be opening at Impacts at the Greenhouse Theater Center January 21st. So please make your way down to see the show I wrote and am directing, because these actors are amazing. And we're going to have the poet that inspired that work here as well, Oran Kenyatta Marshall, in February. So that is dope. Look, today we have a guest. Our guests are... So Anthony and I were like, how do we best mark the January 6th, the insurrection? Because much like 9/11, I don't think we can ever forget, and I think we need to always take this day to commemorate, remember, reflect on the day we almost lost democracy for good, so that we keep that at the forefront and we do not lose it again. So we were inviting folks. We invited some people in Chicago that we knew had been insurrectionists and got out just in time before they got arrested. And then as we dug, we found these 2 amazing individuals who will be joining us today. Photographer Nate Gowdy will be with us, and Terry Bouton. They were both there that day and have some deep reflections on the insurrection, what they saw, what they witnessed, and the fact that we cannot keep calling this a picnic, or we can't keep talking about this as just it was just a little march. Just a little march to Hamptons.
Yeah, we have people who were on the ground.
Yes.
With a camera and a brain attached to it. Nate Gowdy is a Seattle photographer of 13 years. He documents this American political era. And in 2023, his self-published debut monograph, Insurrection, the award-winning 150-page book, visually chronicles with time-stamped images and contextual captions the deadly mob attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Nate Gowdy, welcome to Collaboration Radio.
Hey, gosh, Anthony, thanks so much for having me. It's my big anniversary.
Yeah, I bet. Great to have you. I'm here with Carla Stillwell.
Hello, Nate. How are you?
Yeah. Nice to meet you too, Carla. I was just last night refreshing myself on your guys' work, and I was just so impressed with listening to a couple episodes, and I learned a lot.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and shout out Saverio Truglia for connecting us. Tell us, 3 years later, first, I guess let's start with your process of getting there. What drove you, and what was it like as you prepared to head over there with your camera? Set the scene for us.
I had been visiting my my dad, my sister, and brother-in-law in Indiana over the holidays. I'm based in Seattle, and you know, it was our first holiday without my mother, who'd passed of COVID, and unexpectedly and tragically, and I really didn't want to go to Washington D.C. for this, you know, Stop the Steal or Save America MAGA rally, but I had missed Charlottesville a few years prior because I had been, you know, I'd missed that part of the story because I'd been photographing a friend's beautiful wedding, and it hurt missing, not being there, and that's just how I'm wired. You know, I've been covering this since, you know, the political climate since 2015, and so anyway, it sounded like it could get weird, and they always are, and so travel was really cheap because the pandemic was still raging, and there was no vaccine yet. But I found found cheap flights to Atlanta, Georgia, and I was there for a few days documenting the historic Senate runoffs, and then I jumped to D.C. and that morning I was beat. I was tired after days of running around and you know, and took a selfie in the mirror and I looked disheveled. And so anyway, I was running behind. I was getting going. I was a little slow that morning, and I was walking toward the Washington Monument on the National Mall when I encountered a contingent of militiamen, and I immediately recognized them as Proud Boys because I'd photographed the man leading them. Because he's from the Seattle area, from Auburn, Washington, Ethan Nordine. He had a bullhorn in his hands and was shouting out commands, and they were chanting F-word Antifa to a really sparsely populated National Mall. And so I had a choice. You know, either I continue on toward the ellipse to the former president's rally, or I follow these guys. And it didn't take long for it to get weirder. I photographed Proud Boys on occasions over the years, and I found them to be they like to bait people into confrontation, physical confrontation. And so I figured if I respected their space, they would respect mine, especially since I had a camera, and because they're aware of public optics, and well, that wasn't the case. Exactly 10 minutes in, I was attacked.
Wow!
I was lunged at, and I was quick enough on my feet to back up, and I yelled that hey, I put my arms up and said, hey, I'm photojournalist for Rolling Stone, and they started mocking me and making fun of my voice and then yelling that I was Antifa, and relaying wherever I was with regard to them. They were people on the fringes of the contingent of about 200 to 300 people, I estimate, in my estimation. They were relaying my coordinates, and by this point I had backed up so that I wouldn't get attacked again, and kind of eventually a few other members of the media kind of were in tow, and so I felt a little safer again. But I just followed them throughout the morning, and they posed for photos in front of the east front of the Capitol, group photos. They kneeled and prayed. They, funny part, one moment I documented that I haven't seen any other photos of this part was when they all march. They're marching. I still don't know where the day's going, and it's coming on, about 12 noon, and they sorry, I just got a text from a friend who needs to be let in. Sorry, I got distracted.
No problem.
Sorry.
This is, your photographs are so intense. I mean, the black and white and the contrast and the framing and the action and it's scary. Like, what was the vibe like? There's a certain vibe before a Bears game. There's a certain vibe before a Metallica concert. there's a certain vibe before, soldiers go into war. What was the vibe like that morning? I mean, we get the feeling, but what was the vibe like?
That's a great question. So at this point, it alternated from rabid and just, chanting, 1776 and fight for Trump and stuff of that nature. But at this point in my story, we are, they're marching, and I don't know where they're going, and we end up at 2nd and Constitution at a bunch of food trucks, and the vibe is really chill. The insurrection hasn't happened yet, and all of a sudden I'm standing in line for hot dogs with armed insurgents. And it was really bizarre, and, just kind of got a picture of this guy with a pile of hot dogs, and it was really chill, and they were streaming President Trump and mingling and just very, just easy going. But then the calm before the storm. This is the calm before the storm, yeah. And then about after 40 minutes of lunch, they all got in formation again, and the mood immediately turned very, very serious and solemn. And they were marching, and I'm up there with the leaders, Joey Gibson, Ethan Nordine, Zachary Rail, and who have all been, charged and convicted of a seditious conspiracy. But basically we're marching, and they marched to I say we, I wasn't one of them, but I was in tow. And we excuse me, they arrived at the Peace Monument at the northwest approach of the Capitol, and when I watched later, when I'm watching New York Times documentary Day of Rage, I noticed that I'm standing right next to a man who, it turns out, was the first to approach the police officers, the 5 police officers at the barricade, and the crowd swarmed him, and it happened so suddenly. I wasn't even facing the Capitol. I was just in awe of the sea of people that had followed these militants and left. Trump was still speaking at this point. He was still speaking for another 20 minutes. But they'd left his speech and were following along with these militants. And it was like a pep rally gone, all this toxic masculinity and white supremacy gone totally, totally off the charts. And then they're rushing, and they cross the line. They storm the bicycle rack metal barricades. They topple those over. They attack the police. A police officer was knocked out, and I was attacked. I was pushed off a 3-foot balustrade at the base of some stairs. And luckily I'm a good faller, and I was okay. But even some of the Trump supporters who were caught up in all this were concerned for my safety, and because I wasn't wearing press credentials, which I don't think would have been safe, because I actually saw an AP photographer get pushed off a 5-foot retaining wall by 4 assailants, and I thought I would be next. But luckily, I othered myself by wearing a N95 mask and having cameras on my person, but I'm a white guy, and I was wearing a maroon hoodie and a tan Carhartt beanie, and so they couldn't be 100% certain that I wasn't on their team, that I wasn't one of them.
Wow!
And so that, but I could feel the glares all around me. And my trick is just never make eye contact, because once I do, they can see it in my eyes that I'm afraid. So just kind of play along, and most of my photos, 124 photos in my book, were taken with a fixed wide lens. Because funny enough, I didn't come equipped. I hadn't been to Indiana on vacation with all my gear, so I was borrowing a long lens and camera from a friend. But he had all these presets that I couldn't, I couldn't autofocus like normal, and I reset the camera, and then it disappeared, the autofocus, completely. We figured it out later, but so I was stuck shooting wide, and which I think really transports the viewers of the images there, on the ground, and it was. I lost my train of thought.
Nate,
yeah.
let me jump in and ask. I have a question,
sure.
Because I'm interested in what people were saying, and you said at some point they started praying. What was that prayer?
Yes. It was, I don't remember the word.
Did you catch any of that?
I wish I meant to have a GoPro on me that day, but I forgot the card, and so I don't have any live footage. But it was it struck me as pre-war prayer, which was really, really frightening that they were doing this, in the name of their their God that they believed in, and so it was really probably one of the most frightening parts to me. They really, truly believed in what they were doing and what Trump had told them to, yeah.
And do you ever think about the fact that some of those insurrectionists that maybe you brushed shoulders with on that day or saw them praying are now sitting in a cell and reflecting on what happened 3 years ago? Like, what are your thoughts about them today and where they're at, and do you have sympathy for them or anger?
No. Good question. No one's ever asked that. I know for a fact that my pictures of the people who assaulted me, individuals who assaulted me, they still haven't been caught because they were wearing masks to conceal their identity, and my images of them are still on the FBI most wanted images. I've had the FBI come to my office. They were in touch within days, and I happily gave them my images. It was real funny because you see in the movies how they always flip out their wallet to show their badge, and these guys, the badge fell out of their wallet onto the ground, and then they get up to upload my photos, and their hard drive wasn't formatted for Mac, and it's just so ridiculous. So ridiculous. And this is the so-called deep state. But
floppy
back to your question,
floppy disks.
But back to your question, I want people to be held accountable, and my images from that day were actually submitted as evidence in the Colorado Trump trial, to proof of insurrection. They went from peaceful when they crossed those bike-rack barriers, they crossed a hard line. They became, they went from peacefully protesting, demonstrating to rioters and insurrectionists.
I want to jump in and remind our listeners that you can call in today at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, because this is some this is other world conversation. We all watched that day. I was in my living room like, what? So to have somebody to answer some questions that was there would be, I know, interesting to me if I weren't in the studio. So please, 773-763-WCPT if you want to jump into this conversation and ask.
And if you want to see Nate's photography, you can go to NateGowdy.com. That's NateGowdy.com. You can order his book. It might be a good gift for somebody who wants to not forget what happened on
Nate,
January 6th.
Was there ever any doubt in your mind that this was planned?
That's a great question. This was, a lot of people got swept up in it, but it was absolutely planned. The Proud Boys were incognitos. Usually they wear their colors, which are these Fred Perry black and yellow polos, but none of them they were not wearing Proud Boys anything, which they usually do. They're very flamboyant. And in this case, they were all incognito, a lot of them wearing flat jackets and such. A lot of, things like, bear mace and stuff, and, in the wide open. But a lot of them had neon orange caps, and that was to identify one another. And I believe there were 8 breaches of the interior of the Capitol that day. It has been found that the Proud Boys were involved in every one of those breaches. And so, I firmly believe this was absolutely planned.
Were there actual gallows on the front lawn of the Capitol?
Yeah. I believe that was John Minichiello's photograph of the gallows out there. I didn't actually see it myself, but I've seen the image. They were chanting when Trump tweeted that Mike Pence had let the country down around 2:24. So I have a photo of them that I'm surrounded by people at the Inauguration Day stage, pumping their fists, chanting "Hang Mike Pence."
Wow. Scary day. Nate, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, you can go to nategowdy.com to see more of his work. What's up? What's next for you, Nate?
Well, it should be another unfortunately weird year. I would have loved to be making. I started my career photographing Seattle's queer and trans communities, the nightlife and the marriage equality movement. And it was such a joyous, historic time, and now I go to these MAGA rallies, and these. At first, I was trying to find humanity in these people to help maybe bridge the divide and understand them. But every one I've been to, I've been to roughly 75 official MAGA and MAGA adjacent events and demonstrations, and everyone I go to, their humanity's lost on me a little more each time. They're so far gone, and so I'm going to be out on the campaign trail as much as I can. I'm headed to Iowa next week for the caucuses. And right now I'm looking, I'm going backwards and curating 8 years of images that have never been seen before. You can go to my website, nategowdy.com, and go to the series, The Rabid Americans, to see what I have up so far, and I've been updating it daily. And the book's for sale there. It's literally the only book of photojournalism that visually chronicles that day, the events of that tragic, horrible day.
Wow.
And so I'm. It was my attempt to, my bread and butter as a photographer in Seattle is to make people look good at events and headshots and portraits and stuff. And the photojournalism documentary work really doesn't pay. I can't make a living doing it. So this book was my attempt to monetize the work so that I can, just be out there as much as possible and continue doing it.
How's that work for you?
Oh, well, I self-published the book. I've sold 1,200 copies, and it was my livelihood in 2022. It sustained work on the book. Unfortunately, awesome. I printed more copies than I've sold, so I still have a lot of books. But fortunately, for example, Mother Jones did an interview with me last year, and just reminded their readership and followers of that interview, and I've been getting book orders have been rolling in today, and it just shows the power of just the proper exposure. I wish this book deserves to be on bookstores, but the nature of publishing, is in shambles in my opinion, and so as a self-publisher, it's just kind of I've learned the publishing part. Now it's kind of figuring out the promotion part.
Wow. So
which I think as artists and creatives, we're all kind of always kind of navigating. I'm sure you're very familiar with it.
Don't get us started. And audience design. If you chase the right stuff, the stuff that people want intuitively and subconsciously to see and hear and illuminate, you'll do okay. I think you're doing that. You just gotta keep doing it. You're taking great shots in very important and difficult situations. Final question here. Yeah. How do you unload all this toxicity and trauma? You like to make people look good. You even said you started off by wanting to show the humanity. You're immersing yourself in these populations. Like your brain may know what's going on, but your body over time is going to carry that trauma. How do you find some time to release this this really difficult material?
Yeah, I've been adamant, and I've reiterated, over the last few years now. I guess it's been 3 years that I don't feel like I have trauma from that day. I know a lot of photojournalists and a lot of people who absolutely do. And the friends and colleagues of mine, brave photojournalists and staffers from the Capitol, are at the Capitol, you know, and BIPOC staffers particularly. And so I like that. You know, I've been saying I don't have trauma, but maybe I should have been kind of, maybe sometimes trauma takes a while to realize.
I'm thinking more of the 80 events, not just the one. You know, the sustained immersion in a toxic environment. You know, Trey, all of us let's all take a moment and send some squiggly wiggly good vibes over to Nate right now. Do you feel them, my brother? Do you feel them?
And hopefully we'll see you here in Chicago for the Democratic Convention.
Oh, absolutely. I will be.
So we will put our positive collab vibes all over you.
Yeah, we'll give you a theatrical political statement to photograph. Nate, thank you for joining us. Have a great one, and we look forward to connecting down the road.
Thank you.
That was Nate Gowdy, photographer. That was cool.
That was crazy, because there are things that happened that I saw when I was watching the coverage, the live coverage, that I had decided in my mind didn't really happen. Like, I know my father was a carpenter, right? So I know what it takes to make a gallows, like to make this device that can hold and hang 150, 200-pound human body. So I'm like, how did they get it there? Did they assemble it? Did they disassemble it and then bring it and put it back? Like, how did this happen? And I had decided that nothing that horrific and medieval actually happened. What?
They had some drill guns.
Like, bruh,
they had carpenters on site.
Like, where is your hate stored that this was something that you thought was okay?
How about the prayer?
That's what I want to know.
It made me
what were they praying about?
It made me think about after a football game, you know, like,
yeah,
you know, but this was before war, you know,
right?
And some of them are in jail right now, and that was the moment that they put their life trajectory on the line.
For who? And that's the thing. This is one of the things I want to make a point before we move on. We have to stop putting this in the context of Trump remaining in office. Donald Trump is the biggest afterthought in the whole history of the world. He is not the point. He did not create this world. He did not create these people. His existence gave permission for these people to be who they were. This is America. He identified he as a marketing genius that he is.
Well, and the people he had with him.
They knew who his audience was. They knew who was not being heard. They tapped into a thread that had been rung when Obama got elected. They tapped into a racist thread and rung that, and they played that chord, and that's what has happened. It is not about the man.
It's the dark matter of peace, equity, love, and understanding. It's the yin to that yang. It's the invisible fear that the power and hierarchy of skin color will be.
As a black person, I'm going to say this differently. It is the fear that you will truly get what you deserve. It is the fear that black and brown people will do to you what you have done to them for thousands of years. That's the fear. They're playing offense hard, that there's a population of people that understand that everything that was done was inequitable. All of these things were vile and violent and vicious. And there's this idea that black folks and other folks of color want retribution. No, we just want equality and justice. So let us bring on our next guest. Terry Bouton is an associate producer of history at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He writes about democracy and the American Revolution, and was at Honky Kong. on January 6, 2021, and has joined us. Hi, Terry.
Hi, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Welcome to the show, Terry. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
So, Terry, just quickly, how did you get there that day? Why were you on the ground?
So I was there with my wife, accompanying my wife, she had COVID. She was doing a documentary film project in India for a thesis project that got blown up by COVID. We were actually in India, and when everything shut down, and then had to fly back, and the project got scrapped, and she was looking for another project to replace it, and figured she was interested in women and women on the far right, and so we were there so she could take pictures of the Stop the Steal protest. I actually didn't want to go because I had been following social media and knew about the threats of violence from the Proud Boys and 3%ers and thought it was going to be dangerous. And she's like, no, it's like Fortress D.C. We had been to every protest of the Trump era, starting with the Women's March and the Science March and the Climate March and all the rest. And they had been a significant police presence at all of these. And she's like, well, with threats of violence, of course they're going to be like out in force. And so I relented. We got a late start on that day, went and showed up right around, we got to the Union Station parking garage right about the time that they had breached through like the bike racks. By the time we got to we walked along the Supreme Court side, so we were on the east side, the east front as they call it, of the Capitol, not the west front, which is the part facing the mall where all of the most serious violence was. So we got there at like the police kiosk just as they had breached in the building itself. And so by the time we got around, we did a wide sweep around the east front and saw like the crowds up on the stairs, like people up on the stairs. And we didn't at that point in time had no idea how serious it was on the other side. And with D.C., with so many people in D.C., if you've ever been to any of the big protests or when there's like, hundreds of thousands of people in D.C., you can't, your cell phones you're not going to get cell reception. So we weren't getting text. You couldn't check you couldn't check the internet to see what was going on. And so we just were there and then increasingly got a sense about how serious it was and that, something really, really bad was happening.
Was there a moment when you said, "Oh, this is"? Do you remember when you realized that you were in the midst of a horrific, historic event?
Yeah, I think the real. I mean, seeing it all there, but the real moment was when Ashley Babbitt was shot, and someone burst out through the back of the one of the doors of the back of, I think it was on the house side of the Capitol, of the back, the east front balcony at the top of the stairs, and shouted, "They shot a girl!" And that's when things got really dark because the crowd immediately, who had been doing things like singing the Pledge of Allegiance, or the Star Spangled Banner, and then singing religious songs, had then gone through and were and then turned on the police. Like there was prior to that, they had been walking. We had seen Capitol Police and Metro Police around, and even some FBI who eventually showed up once Ashley Babbitt was shot to accompany the ambulance and EMT workers to get her out. They went in with her to get her out. That was the only FBI presence we saw the entire time we were there. Other than that, it was Capitol Police, Metro Police, who were clearly in over their heads. Like they were just like mystified and worried about what was going on. The people we spoke to, the police officers we spoke to. But they were there. They were saying them, prior to that, they were saying, like, we had your back last summer, which was the George Floyd summer, right, of 2020. And they were saying, we had your back last summer. You have our backs now. And it was an order. It was not like a negotiation. It was not a suggestion. The expectation there was that law enforcement was going to join with them like they were going to back the blue and the blue was going to back them. And that changed once Ashley Babbitt was shot. And then you saw, like, there was one Proud Boy who was on top of the stairs who ended up, he had that thin blue line flag, the one with the blue stripe in the middle. And he started shredding it. And then, like, throwing the shredded pieces over the side of to flutter down over the crowd and, over the police. And then they started shouting traitor and cowards and the rest, saying, you better join us. And I was there when they wheeled out Ashley Babbitt's body. I was like 10 feet away, saw directly into her eyes. Like, she was gone. They were working on her, pumping her chest, but her eyes were open and glassy and staring off. And right after she passed, the crowd, like, that's when things got really, that's when we were like, we're getting the hell out of here. Because the crowd started shouting at the police, calling them cowards and traitors and saying, F the blue, like shouting obscenities at the police. And one guy, my wife had her phone out, and one guy looked right into the camera and just said, F the blue, they're the strong arm of the government, they're here to take your guns and put your kids into concentration camps, F the blue, they are not our friends. And that was sort of the sentiment around. Like, it started to get really, really frightening. And that was just part of the whole frightening package that was there. Because once it was clear the violence was going on, and we walked around the whole building at that point, we left the east front and started to walk around the building. But we saw, like the casual ways people were talking about violence. And these are people who look like, if you're white, these are people who look like your aunt and uncle. Like, we were middle-aged white folks and fit right in. Like, we weren't worried. I mean, we were more worried because we were wearing masks than anything else about being spotted or being identified. But there were enough people who, there were enough older people or middle-aged people who were wearing masks who were part of the protest or crowd, probably for medical reasons or whatever, were that we didn't stand out that much. But it was pretty alarming the way that these people, ordinary-looking white folks, were talking about violence, about hanging.
They were wound up. They were wound up.
Terry, you said something that I have never heard in any, and my part of my nerddom has had me scouring the internet for 3 years, listening to stories and accounts, and the fact that this idea that people were saying, we had your back during the Floyd stuff, like, to the police, and that was the turning point between the Blue Lives Matter, because I was always wondering when that ended. So for you saw a distinct moment in history where it was out the window.
I don't know, yeah, I mean, for them, that was the moment that they were expecting the Capitol Police to be on their side, and when they didn't flip, and then somebody was killed. There was a decided shift in the tone of what had been going on. But I think that
reality.
Yeah.
It sounds like from like them singing. Everybody through their own eyes is the hero of their own story. And this group of delusional folks were so wound up, kind of like Pizzagate, they saw themselves as the hero of a new American revolution.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, our 1776. Like, you could hear that over and over. This is our 1776, our American Revolution.
And
absolutely,
they fully expected the police, when push came to shove, to have their back and help them overturn the election and not steal, but get back the election.
Yeah, no, they're the patriots. They were all imagining themselves as the patriots and the heroes of the story. Like, when we first showed up, this woman, my wife and I were walking, and the woman starts like, "Oh, don't go that way, hon. They're gassing the patriots." And like, the patriots. I was like, "Don't mess. We're not messing with the delusion today. We're not." it was pretty alarming. And I heard earlier talking about that gallows. Like, that gallows was built to be used.
Yeah.
And the people there, they would have cheered. Like, they would have cheered. And it was like a lynch mob. Like, historically, I'm an historian and use pictures of lynchings in my teaching to show still like the festive atmosphere. Like, you pack a picnic and go watch the bodies swing.
Right.
And it was that same kind of like maniacal, festive feeling in the air. Like, it was like this bizarre, demented, evil carnival feeling to it.
A PTSD therapist that I've been become friends with calls lynch mobs an orgy of the ego. And that's what this sounds to me like. It was inflated and refracted egos conjoined and blown out of control.
Yeah, but my fear is that the blown out of control part misses the extent to which this wasn't just swept up in the moment and wasn't planned. Just like these like also almost to a person, like, of the people that we spoke to. And we spoke to a lot of people and did a lot of like kind of eavesdropping on conversations. And there was this sense of like, this is the beginning. Like, there was a lot of excitement about it. Like that this was just the beginning, and you can see this. Like, my wife is actually writing a book about several women that she's been following for the last 3 years who were arrested for J6, and she's those things that she's found is that like there's very little repentance among any of these folks. Like, there's very little sense of remorse, or instead you get just the opposite. That for these people, regardless of what the consequences have been, whether they've been in jail, whether they have lost jobs, in some cases lost houses because they lost jobs and then couldn't pay their mortgage, or they just sort of decided to go, totally radicalize and go off the grid. J6 has become an identity for them. It has become a community. It has become and that's why it's so difficult to dislodge, and that's why it's been growing, is that these people are in these self-radicalizing, mostly online communities where they are going further down the rabbit hole, where they have invented their own truths, where many of them are going even further. Like, the ones that were in QAnon are now in the realms of conspirituality, where they're like believe that they have alien DNA and that great awakening, like a big ascension, is about to happen. Like, basically different kinds of versions, like a new age version of the apocalyptic end of days is coming, where only certain number of people are going to like survive, and right. The rest of us are doomed. It's really frightening where we're at, and that I don't think we appreciate how normalized that has become on the right, and how much of the right has become is in that space, and that's the real danger. And then how many people I just don't think folks are aware of how deep and serious this crisis is, and like if I could say anything to your listeners who are wavering or upset about Biden and what's going on in Gaza, or he didn't pass student loans and the rest of it, like loan relief, like this is not the time. this is not. These folks are serious, and they're coming for blood. Like, they're going to, like, this is bound up with Christian nationalism and all kinds of other things. This is race. This is culture. This is against not just the Black civil rights movement, but all of the civil rights movements of the 1960s and 70s, the women's movement, LGBTQ plus. It's against, like, even cultural values. It's all of that. It's the whole package that is in
Terry,
this weird trade show carnival of people. Yeah.
I don't want to I don't want to interrupt you. I wish we could talk forever. We do have a caller. Somebody wants to jump into this conversation. So let's bring that person up. Hello.
Hi, my name is Judy. I just took out a Christmas tree, and I hit the deck here for a while because we're tired, and then I turned on the radio. And when you were talking about the mob, I'm in my 80s, and I went to Catholic school as a child. And they're teaching you about sin and how to avoid sin, and, like, you know, don't hang around with that kind of a group because, you know, that's an occasion of sin. They might make you do things. And one of the things they mentioned was a mob. They said, don't join a mob because it can, you kind of lose your own sense of being and duty, and when you are with a mob, there's something attractive about it, something that can pull you in. Therefore, they labeled it, you know, going along with the mob being an occasion of sin. I haven't even thought of that phrase for 100 years. So when you were talking about it, it all came back, and I thought, oh, my goodness, there's that old theory of, if, you know, there's something about the chanting and the marching along and that can actually pull you.
It's the energy, you know. If you put 100 people in a house, you don't even need to turn on the heat. The energy is intoxicating. So. And in these days when people are isolated, they're on their phones, they're in computers, they're alone with their device, and they're connected to hundreds and thousands of people, and all of a sudden they all show up.
Well, that leaves me out. I am not on the devices. I don't know how to use them. I mean, I'm a mess on them. I'm terrible.
Well, you did a good job finding us today. Congratulations, and thank you for calling in.
I talked to Patty a lot, and I had the channel on, and like I said, we were taking down the tree, and it's a tiresome job.
Oh, it is. You got to just do it in stages. You know, you don't have to do it all at once because you got to put everything away properly. And sometimes,
that's it. You're taking them off and you're putting them back in boxes or wrapping them up. It just. It's not the excitement of getting it up.
We're glad we could create a miniature mob here to give you a little respite. Thank you for calling in. Do we have another caller? Did I see another one?
I think, no, that caller dropped. Terry, I have one last thing. We only have a few more moments with you, and thank you again so much. I wish we could talk to you and Nate for like another 2 hours. But one thing that I personally believe we wouldn't be here if we if the country had handled the Civil War and the Confederacy correctly. And you talk about how deep these run. As a historian, do you feel like there is a parallel in the in what happened after Reconstruction then, and then, you know, instead of those people being punished with no accountability, they're all running around, and then their kids are building statues, and you know, it's the Knights of Columbus, everything, and the rise of the Klan. Do you see a parallel in that part of history to what we're going through now?
I mean, I think it's part of the same story, right? It's a continuation of the same story. That there are moments in this story, you know, of a long, I mean, in that case, a long black civil rights struggle away from slavery towards citizenship and a meaningful citizenship and participation in democracy. That sort of every time there are substantial gains for black Americans, there has always been a backlash, like a really powerful backlash. And, you know, we saw that not just with the Civil War and Reconstruction. It was a long period where there were troops in the South, and black people were allowed to vote, and black men were allowed to vote, and there were, you know, whole legislatures that were that had a strong black presence, if not a black majority. And then without, you know, when white Northerners got tired of protecting black civil rights in the South, and you know, Northern white racism reared its head again. That we saw that, you know, then they pulled the troops and the protections disappeared, and there was a peace. You know, the country was reconstructed on both North and South, neither one protecting black rights.
Right.
And so we see these moments that are happening, and the question now for all of us is, like, how many white folks are on the side of making of justice and of social justice. And I don't think that that's clear. Like, I don't know how many, I don't know where we're at. I mean, I think 2016 in the election of Trump was frightening. It was an eye-opener. But, you know, we could all say, oh, people didn't recognize who Trump was in 2016. Well, 2020, he almost won again, right? I mean, it was quite close. And I don't know what we're going to be in 2024. I don't know who we are as a country. And I think that's the frightening thing, and that's the crossroads we're at.
Well,
is trying to think is we're all going to learn.
I'll say this in our last 90 seconds. I think one of the things that you and our other guests witnessed is that we do know who we are. And the problem is, how do we fix it? Thank you so much for joining us. And we will talk to you again, hopefully very soon.
Thank you, Terry.
Yep.
Wow.
Oh, my stars.
We learned some stuff. I feel like I had a little. I was in class today. I learned a lot about as theater people. I have a better feeling of the vibe.
My mouth is agape. I don't even know, because I thought I understood, but this piece about the police just ties things.
Because that's when the delusion hit reality.
Yes.
They thought the blue was going to turn and go with them.
They thought the blue was white. Blue equaled all of these things, because that's what our police system was founded on and to protect white men and their property.
Well,
so
I'd love to find out what Cat Williams has to say about the insurrection. Maybe we can have him on the show. But next week, we're going to have Pugs Adams.
Yes, the artist and amazing
Renaissance
artist.
Music, visual art. He does quilts.
Quilts.
Oh, yeah. Hey!
Quilting.
Collaboration Radio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The insurrection of January 6, 2021. Don't forget.